What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our weekly DFS live stream. We are live from Atlanta. We're actually in a little penthouse apartment here. It's one of the few times where an Airbnb has advertised as being like a penthouse with a 360-degree view, and they haven't been just absolutely full of shit. We're actually in downtown Atlanta, one of the best views that I've seen, and got to see the golf course today and super stoked for this week's action. You guys can see all of the hair is gone. We have nothing up there. It's going to be super hot this week. It's been long overdue, and we gave ourselves the complete cut. We actually cut it ourselves last night. So I went over to my parents' house. They had a set of clippers, and me and my mom went at it. So it's not a perfect cut, but it was long overdue, and will hopefully keep us a little bit cooler there. So first off, welcome to the stream. We're going to make sure you know everything you need to this week to get ready for your DFS and your prop exposure, and hopefully go out there and have yourself a profitable one. We're going to go into the weather, any questions that you have down in chat, and overall, whatever you're curious about here for this weekend. I'm curious about what I saw out there on the golf course. Just go ahead and let me know. One thing's for sure, it's hot as ever living hell out there. And the golf course, actually a little bit firmer than I might have been expecting. So we'll talk about all that here in a second. But first off, welcome on in. You got Jason down there, boots on the ground, of course. That's what I'm here for. What's going on, Nick? Do I think everyone playing 150 will just used all 30? Well, I'm playing 150 lineups, and I'm not using all 30. So hopefully that answers your question. Brant, what's going on? Welcome to the stream. What's going on, Mark? How's Atlanta? Well, only been here about 3-4 hours. So definitely TBD on that department. But we've got a Steeler game tomorrow. I might as well mention that. The Steelers are coming into town for preseason. So tomorrow, guys, I hate to say it, there's not going to be a round 2 stream. I'm going to the preseason game. I just realized about 2 hours ago that the Steelers were in town, and a few of the Steelers were out there at the practice round today. So that's kind of what spurred me to think about it and whatnot. So yeah, it's going to be great, man. It should be a good weekend. But yeah, no round 2 stream. I hate to break it to you guys, but we're going to watch some Steelers. Paying for the haircut is for suckers. We're definitely getting a good one on the way back. But nothing was open. It was like a spur of the moment decision at like 8:30 p.m. So we didn't have many options, to say the least. Hair looks good. Yeah, I mean, it's a 3 across the board. So it was kind of hard to mess it up, right? But we're definitely going to get it professionally done. You like it? There you go. All right, let's hop into it, boys. I'm very, very tired. I drove like 9 hours today. And I walked a golf course, so I'm not going to dilly-dally. We're just going to hop right on in, shall we? So last year, this golf course played 2 under par. We're not going to see that again. I'll just say that right now. I kind of preluded to it before, but the golf course was a lot firmer than at least what I was expecting. They did get quite a bit of rain last week and the week before, but the fairways were running out. You saw a lot of players getting like sometimes 30, 40 yards of rollout on some of the downhill shots. And then I didn't get to see many iron shots hit. I only saw like 4 or 5. The wedges I saw definitely spun back, so it's not like they were concrete out there, but I saw a long iron into the hole 15, right? So it's like a 210-yard par 3, and it almost rolled out through the end of the green. So it's looking like it's not going to be a birdie fest, right? Like you've seen for the last 2-3 weeks. It's more so going to be like your average run-of-the-mill tour event. It's not going to be a dart fest, but it's certainly not going to be like a firm and fast like difficult type of golf course either, right? This course is still going to play under par, still probably at least like a stroke under, but that 2 under par average that you saw in 2020, 2021 and last year, probably not going to happen, right? It's going to play closer to its historical average of close to 69 strokes. So that's the first thing I guess worth pointing out is that because it is so damn hot, there's literally not a cloud out there in Atlanta right now. This place is going to get even crispier by the end of the weekend. So while I think scores will be out there tomorrow, you're going to see maybe even a 63 or 62 out there with next to no wind. Getting a little ahead of myself with the weather, but the weather for tomorrow is going to be perfect outside of the heat. You're going to see some low rounds, right? You're still going to see like a potential 63, maybe a 62 if somebody really puts it together. But by the end of the weekend, I think you might be seeing like maybe at best a 65, maybe a 65, I should say, probably like a 66 there over the weekend. So this golf course, can change identity if it does get super firm and fast. So that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. In terms of what I saw out there, in terms of players today, it was mostly guys. There were only like 3 or 4 actually playing out on the golf course. Most of them were on the range and really taking it easy. There wasn't anyone real grinding at it because of how hot it was. The one thing I did notice is that you had a lot of the guys in like 20th through 30th place. So the guys starting at like even or -1, those were the ones out there working. The ones that were kind of already done, or at least I didn't see on the golf course, they could have just been done already, right? I got there pretty late. Were like the guys like Scotty, Rory, Hovland, and so on and so forth. I didn't see any of them out there. So it was more like your Jordan Spieths, right? The guys that I guess have a little bit more to work on. So in terms of a range report, I don't know. The guys looked like they were striping the golf ball. Like, I don't want to tell you somebody was hitting the ball poorly. Everyone seemed to be doing a pretty good job with it. When I called out John Rahm playing poorly at the API this year, he went out there and was first round leader. So we're going to avoid the whole frustrated player on the range talk, because just history tells us that shit doesn't matter, right? John Rahm, just for the record, that week at API, every shot he hit, he was like just shaking his head. He was hitting like duck hook after duck hook. And then he went out there round 1, if you remember, he shot like -7 or -8. It was like boat racing the field. He was like -200 after the first round, I think, because he had like a 4 or 5 shot lead. And then he finished like 40th by the end of the week. Like, he was complete dog shit. So I think what I saw was definitely accurate, but maybe it took a little bit to come around, right? Let's take a look at the weather now. So I kind of preluded to it, but it's going to be perfect out there tomorrow. In terms of your sustained winds and your wind gusts, there's pretty much none to speak of. You can see actually towards midday, it gets right around 1 mile an hour sustained winds, which is something that we typically never see on tour. If we go over to Friday, we're actually going to change over to the NAM forecast, right, so that we can look at the more accurate one here. It's going to be a little bit more windy. We're not really looking at waves because it's only a 30-player field, but if you're trying to get an idea for how difficult the golf course is going to play, it should play significantly more difficult on Friday compared to Thursday. Not only will it kind of get crispier, right, as it'll be sunny for most of the day out there tomorrow. It's also going to be a little bit more windy too. So both of those factors are going to make the golf course more difficult. Just from the fantasy side, right, there's no kind of waves to attack, right? The earliest tee times, I believe, are like 11:26 a.m. Eastern. The last tee times, I think, are at like 2 p.m. or thereabouts, sometime in the afternoon tomorrow. So there's like, what, a 2.5, 3 hour spread between the tee times, at least in my opinion. I could be wrong on this. I'm not a weather czar. I don't claim to be, right? I don't think there's a weather edge to play, right? If you're going to play Showdown, maybe you could take some of the real early starters, but I don't think you're getting an advantage. I think you could play it pretty straightforward when it comes to the weather, more just focus on taking the types of players that you want to go after and then playing game theory, right? As you typically would for most Showdown slates. So we'll leave it at that with the weather. We're not going to go crazy. Again, I just want to keep it to the point here so that we can hop through it. Let me see if I can get this the skyline to show up. I don't think it's going to, is it? Oh, well, it's too glary over there. The live stream, I guess it'll be for Saturday then. We might be able to squeeze in a live stream tomorrow. We'll have to see. The actual game's at 7:30 p.m. So I'm thinking if I left the golf course early to come and record, I could do it. But then the round's not going to be over tomorrow until like 6:30 p.m. Probably not doable. We'll figure it out. But we'll get the skyline in there at some point. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't know how this place was as cheap as it was, to be quite frank with you. It wasn't like cheap, but like it should be a lot more expensive. Let's just say that. All right, let's hop into some of the picks, some of the strategy for this week. If you guys are living under a rock and you haven't noticed yet, yes, starting strokes are a thing at the Tour Championship. And what we want to focus on for our, I guess, live stream here, right, isn't the guys that I'm playing, right? On a week like this, it's all the world's top players. You have all these guys starting at the top of the board with starting strokes. You just kind of got to pick your guys this week. It's how you're going to build those lineups that matters. So that's what we're going to focus on. You guys know I like Rory. You guys know I like Xander because of their, course history, their track records here. I like Ricky. Sorry, not Ricky. Tommy Fleetwood. I do like Ricky this week. I do have to say that, but I mostly wanted to say Tommy Fleetwood there because of just how he's been playing of late. You can take anyone in this field, right? There's only like 2-3 players I'd say that are just like objectively bad plays in this field. Outside of that, the other 28 players you could easily make a case for. So kind of like what Nick was saying before, I kind of want to circle back to that comment. Could you play all 30 players? You could, right? But I don't think it's the smart strategy. So let's pick this apart one by one. This is good. This is a tough, tricky slate, right? So we're going to have to handle it a few different ways. Let's start with a large field GPP. So let's assume you are a 150 maxer, right? So that question that Nick asked about potentially playing everyone in a 150 max field, that's not how I would do it, but you certainly could. In a 150 max, you have to think about your goal, right? Our goal playing in a large GPP, right, where you're going to actually be 150 maxing is to beat 90,000 to maybe 60 to 70,000 other entries, right? Those contests are top heavy. You are going for first place. This week, to do that, you have to be thinking game theory, right? You have to be thinking about differentiating yourself, because with only 30 players, it's easier to first off, duplicate yourself, which is horrible in a large field contest when it comes to your EV. But even more importantly, it's a lot harder to get leverage when your average ownership in the field is going to be 20%. So you have to get creative with how you're going to do so, right? Typically, we're looking for like sub 5% owned players to squeeze into a lineup to force in a little bit of leverage. We can't really do that this week. So I have a few ideas for the large field GPP. My strategy, my thought process here is going to be to do it with lineup construction. That could be going out there, maybe taking more of these 9K guys, because you can see their ownership is a lot lower than their peers. Not only are they going to be lower owned, but this type of lineup, right, that takes maybe 2, perhaps even 3 guys down here in this lower owned range is going to be different just from the lineup construction perspective, right? You're going to be taking different players down low than your peers just because you're living in the 9K range for your top end options, as opposed to taking all these stud tier options. So one way to differentiate yourself would be lineup construction, right? Just maybe taking different parts of the board than other people are playing. Worth noting that the top end of the 7K range here too is also going relatively overlooked, because everyone wants to play the 5-6K options, right? Like Jordan Spieth hadn't, right, at those kind of price tags. Sam Burns, right, that we talked up earlier. And then they want to play the studs up here, right? They want to take the guys that are starting with those starting strokes. So that's one way to differentiate. My criticism of that, and the reason why I'm not the biggest fan of using that strategy, is it feels like it's negative EV, right? You're taking guys that aren't starting with the lead, right? You aren't jamming in by, using a super cheap player, an extra stud into a lineup. So for me, that's a way to get different, but I don't know if I would advocate for it, just because it feels like it's negative EV, right? You're building lineups that have a much lower chance of actually succeeding. The way that I'm differentiating this week is with salary. I am not spending all of my salary. This is not typically a strategy that I use, but the more and more I thought about it, I had a lot of time to think about it today. I'm going through some of the game theory notes. I'm just not going to spend all my salary. In fact, I looked at some of the recent optimals at this lineup, at this tournament, and I looked at some of the actual winning lineups in GPPs at the Tour Championship over the years, and a lot of the optimals have been close to like $49,500 or even like $49,000, and a lot of the even winning lineups, which typically, right, the winning lineup is a lot different than the actual optimal lineup for any given week. The winning lineups, 2 of the last 4 years in the big $20 have spent less than $49,000, which is unheard of, right? Those GPP winners spending less than, let's say, like $200 within the max is unheard of, right? Like, that's why we point out the difference between the optimal and then the actual winning lineup, right? Because no one builds the lineups that are leaving 1,000 on the table. People are building those this week. And you best believe when you only have 30 players to work with, you're going to have to touch those kind of outcomes to have success. Like for most weeks, right? Like when we're playing 150 player field, right? Like the optimal lineup means nothing, right? It might spend $48,000, but no one's going to enter that. Like it doesn't matter with that many options. With 30 players, people are going to get wonky. And over the last few years, they've won GPPs by getting wonky. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take notes, right? I'm going to try and learn from what some other people have done over the last few years and try it out myself. So I'm going to have a floating cap. I'm going to build about, I don't want to give away my whole process here, guys. You got to realize I'm still playing against you. Okay. So I want to give you a couple hints, but not the whole thing. I'm going to build lineups with different salary caps. That's all I'm going to say. You can interpret that how you'd like, figure out how to do it yourself. I'm not going to give you all 66 people out there in the live stream right now the nuts, but I'm going to build lineups with like different price levels, right? So maybe I build a few with like 47.5, right? Maybe my cap on a few is $49,000. I'm going to take my set of 150, or it might actually be like 200 lineups this week, or I'm throwing like 50 into the $20 too. And then I'm going to divvy it up between different price ranges. So there's different ways to approach this slate. I don't think any one is correct over the other, right? We're going to have to see how they actually all pan out this week, which of course we'll review on the Week in Review stream on Monday. But that's how I would attack a large field GPP. If you're in a single entry, a 2 to 3 max, cash contest, any of that sort of fun stuff, I probably just take the studs and duds approach. So I would go up here, play the guys, the studs that are getting all the starting strokes and whatnot, and just take all the chalk down low, right? Because if you're in a smaller field contest, duplicating yourself is a lot less common. Leverage is not really as necessary as in a large field GPP. So you got to know what kind of contest you're playing in, right? Now, I'm not saying in a, single entry or 2 to 3 max to only play chalk. But like if you want to take 4 guys that are going to be like 25% owned and then have like maybe only 1 or 2, right, that are like in the teens in terms of their ownership, that's fine for a single entry. Even like a 2 to 3 max, I'd be fine with that. Even like a 20 max and only has like a couple thousand entries, so like not like a true GPP out there, you could enter those kind of lineups. I have no problem with it. When you're in that kind of field, right, you don't have to really be worrying about all that as much. But yeah, in the large field GPPs, it's going to be a fun one, guys. I mean, if you're just going to build lineups, right, and use all your salary, not do anything in terms of like lineup construction and whatnot, you're going to duplicate yourself a ton this week. I mean, you're going to have duplicated lineups at like 40, 50 in the large field GPP. Heck, there's probably going to be a lineup train tomorrow with like 400, 500 people duplicated. So that's the issue with the large field GPP is like, I don't know, the ownership. Let's just go over that too. Like your highest owned player this week, I've got Scotty at 30%. Your lowest owned player, I believe, is Jason Day. Who I got? 14 point. Sorry, actually, it's Ricky Fowler at 12.5%. He's like what? It's 17.5% difference between your highest and your lowest owned player, and that's the most extreme example that we have. Like ownership this week, game theory. It's not a good game theory week, right? Then your lowest owned player is 12.5% owned. Like it's not the same, right? As guys that are like 0.3, 0.4, sometimes even just like 1% owned. That makes a huge difference out there. Let's catch up on chat. I'm sure we got a few comments to go through, and then we'll talk about a few players that I like. Got to support your team, of course. Hey, Luke, with the reduced field and elevated ownership levels, what level of total ownership would make me worried about being chalky? So I wouldn't do it that way, Chris. It's not the best way to do that because when everyone's super chalky, right, that's just like an arbitrary number. It's more about how you play them than who you're actually playing this week. So kind of like I was just saying, I would either do it with lineup construction in terms of your differentiation, or I'd go out there and set it at max salary of maybe like 49.5 or something like that. But that's what I would do. You said you aren't playing all 30. Who am I fading? You'll have to check out the Patreon, Mark. I can't give you every play. So, I'm not going to go over any fades here. If you want to see who I'm fading, check out the Patreon. Luke's looking like a new man. Yep. What will the most salary be left on the table? So you're saying like how much can you leave essentially while still being competitive, Sam, if I interpret your question there correctly? I mean, $4,000, literally you can. Like last 2 years ago, guys, the winning GPP won like 48 with a $48,000 salary. Like people don't realize how little those placement points mean. And let's just go through it now, Samuel. I'll point it out for you. So Scotty Scheffler at $13,400. If he were to win this golf tournament, there's a chance that he's not optimal. Does everyone out there realize that? I just want to make that readily apparent to everyone out there. You realize that like even if Rory wins at $13,000, he might not be in the optimal lineup. The main reason why, just to give you an idea here, is the salary. $13,000 is I mean, it's like 2 players. It's like 2.5 players worth of salary, right? That you're investing into Rory McIlroy. If he's going to go out there and pay off, he has to give you at least like 1.5 golfers worth of production, right? He's got to go out there and at least score you like 110 fantasy points, which means even if he were to score like -10 this week, and let's say Scotty shoots -7 over 4 rounds, which could win this golf tournament, like I'm saying, that kind of performance, -7 plus a win, is not optimal. So the reason why I say you might want to leave way more salary than I think people realize is if these guys down here in the 7-8K range, right, like go off and end up scoring just I don't know a good metric to give you here, but let's say they score triple digits. They can get up to 100 fantasy points, right? Let's say they shoot like -15 to -20, and they're getting obviously some placement with that. They could easily be optimal over guys like Scotty or Rory. And really all that has to happen, right, for one of these two to, or even both of them, right, to not end up optimal is for neither of them to win, right? And let's say only one of these guys can win. Let's remind ourselves, right? So like between a Scotty, a Rory, a Victor, and a John Rahm, only one of these guys can actually win the golf tournament. That means that if any of these like 9K or 8K guys go out there and have just a good week, go out there and score, right? Like I said, shoot like -15. I think that's a good goal for your 4 rounds. If you're a chaser, they could easily be optimal over like a Scotty shooting -7. And just to give you the breakdown on that, right? Let's say that there's 7-8 birdie difference, right, between like the guys down here in the 9K range and then what Scotty Scheffler makes. That's more than the 30, placement points right there, right? Let alone the placement points that they're going to be getting themselves for getting all of those. So you can look at this like a Sunday shootout slate, right? Just because you have guys that are starting at the top doesn't mean that they're going to be optimal. So when I'm leaving a bunch of salary on the table, right, it's not in a lineup where I'm taking like a Scotty or a Rory. It's maybe a lineup where I'm just hammering the 9K range or like hammering the 8K range. That's a good way to get different in terms of lineup construction. But like I said, it's kind of negative EV, right? You still want at least like one of these top end options. So yeah, I think $500 at least is what I'm going to leave. Gotcha. Thanks. Of course. Yo, Luke, hope you're doing good. Absolutely. We're having an absolute ball out here in Atlanta. We're going to go to dinner afterwards. So looking forward to that. Let's talk through a few players that I like. So in terms of, core plays, value plays, nothing's really changed. My only outright with starting strokes is Rory. That's not going to change. And my only 2 outrights without starting strokes are not going to change either. It's Xander Schauffele, Tommy Fleetwood. I may add something live when I'm out there on the golf course, but until then, that's what I'm rocking with. Don't want to overexpose myself on any given week like this. And I thought the number on Rory that I got was decent. And I thought the numbers on Xander and Tommy Fleetwood that I was able to get there on Monday night weren't all that bad either. If you're going to consider any bets up top, right, if you're going to take like the non-strokes market, I think these like 8, 9K options are like the sweet spot, right? So like, Ricky Fowler, right? Would you be all that surprised if he went off and had like the week of the tournament? Would not surprise me. Sanjay M, right? Tommy Fleetwood, you guys know I absolutely love him here. Russell Henley loves this golf course. Keegan Bradley, right, can get hot in a hurry. There's a lot of intriguing options down here in the 8 and 9K range that are also in DFS going a little bit lower owned, right, than some of their peers too. So if I was going to do any other outright bets, which I don't plan on doing, at least as of right now, it'd probably be in this range right here. And if you're going to look for any sort of differentiation, which again, I think is very overrated on a week like this, where all the ownership is so condensed, you could take this range for a little bit of differentiation. But again, I don't want to keep harping on that because it's not a normal week, right? Did I see Finau on the course? I did not see him out there, Sean. Apologize for that. Yeah, but I only saw like 8. It was probably like 8 players total, and only like 4 or 5 of them were actually on the golf course. Most of them were grinding on the range. Let's go through a few other, notes in the player pool, right? You guys know, like on a week like this, you could play anyone, right? So like if you have any questions about a specific player, I'll go through them. I guess in terms of chalk to point out, Sepp Straka, really high owned, right? He's like 28% owned. Griot, Burns, Spieth, Hatton, all these just elite tier players, right, that are way underpriced this week. Even Colin Morikawa, right, he's on an absolute roll himself with the form, are all like nearly 30% owned. So if you're going to use one of these players, right, a lot of times for slates, they're like 1-2% owned. Not in a week like this, right? They're as mega chalky as it's going to get. In fact, if you're looking for like a quote unquote pivot down low, your only options are really like Jason Day, Taylor Moore, and then I guess Nick Taylor, because his form is a lot worse than a lot of the other guys in the 5K range. Outside of that, right, everyone's like 30% owned. I mean, 20% on a Siwoo. I've got 23% on a Tony Finau down there. It's just, it's not a week for the pivots, right? It's not a week for the ownership pivots like it would normally be. Outside of that for this week, I guess in cash, right, I would definitely go studs and duds. Like if you could even take Scotty and Rory together in a studs and duds kind of lineup, I wouldn't hate that for a cash build. The idea with cash, by the way, right, is that like everyone I'd say from like Tommy Fleetwood down to Nick Taylor, their projections in terms of projected points aren't all that different from each other. In fact, look at this, right? Fleetwood, I've got it like 70.93 points. Now we don't have every projection on here, right? But look at this, right? Sam Burns is 66.54. So that's like a 4 or 5 point projection, right? The huge difference in terms of projected points are these top tier guys, right? They're just starting with like a 7-shot lead or 10-shot lead with Scotty Scheffler. So if you're playing cash, you 100% want to like jam in as many of these top end guys as you can, and then just use the bottom tier guys to supplement it, right? And make the salary work, because their projections are not all that different, right, than the guys in the 8 and 9K range. So that's why the ownership is distributed the way that it is, right? If you use an optimizer, it's going to spit out a ton of lineups that have the studs and duds kind of build, which I tend to agree with. But just remember, guys, you got to get a little creative with that lineup construction and figure out a way to get different at some point. Let's bring up Draftkings. Let's go through a few lineups together, and then we'll talk some props after. Sound good? Last time you went to the championship, you sat next to Paulina and Lindsey Vonn. I actually was there when was it 2019 that you were there, or maybe it was 2020 PY? I was there when she was walking the golf course, Paulina, that is, and she had like the whole posse with her. You could spot her from a mile away with the clothing that they're all wearing. Pretty hilarious, if you ask me. Yeah, I haven't seen any of the real like public wives out there on the golf course quite some time. I don't know why. Maybe they're not walking with them. But let's go through a few lineups together. So if you're going to take the studs and duds kind of approach, right, just to show you how difficult it can be, right, it puts you down to $5,900, right? If you started with these two players, that's why you've got to play the Strakas of the world, the Sam Burns of the world down here. Heck, even guys like Adam Schenk are getting a bunch of ownership because you have to use them to make these top end lineups work. Right? If you just want to get a little different in terms of your lineup construction, right? Maybe you take Scheffler up top. So you really like Scheffler, but then you take like a Tommy Fleetwood as your second man in, right? Not only does that lower the ownership for your second man in, but it also just changes your lineup construction completely, right? So now you can go down here. You can still take like a pretty chalky Colin Morikawa, but now because your lineup construction is so much different than a lot of other people, you can probably get away with it. So let's throw, a Sanjay in there. Let's say we really like him at that price tag. Let's use Nick Taylor at the min price. You could use your favorite option from $6,600 and below, and round off that kind of lineup. It's completely doable. It's not that outlandish, right? There's only one 5K guy in this lineup. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to add a guy in the 6K range to make this lineup work, but it's not crazy. And it's from a lineup construction perspective, right? But just because you're not taking, just because we're not taking Fleetwood, and instead of taking somebody like a Xander, let's say, and by going with a Tommy Fleetwood, we're getting ourselves just infinite leverage to the field there. So a couple different ways to handle the slate. I would recommend just being creative when you're putting together your lineups. And I'm building them by hand this week. I'll just say that with my optimizer, I don't feel as comfortable as I would be for most slates, just going out there, hitting optimize and entering. So it's going to be a lot of hand building for me. And the way that I'm going to do it is it's not actually going to be building every lineup by hand. But like I said, I'm going to set different max salaries, right? So I'm going to take my same player pool, the same like max ownership percentages that I'm setting for most of my players, and just run different sets of lineups and then hand pick out the lineups that I actually want. So the hand build part, right, is just going to be going through and clicking through all the lineups that I actually want to enter. So It's definitely a week where you need to vet your lineups. You need to go through them probably one-on-one to make sure that everyone is to your liking. I wouldn't just go out there, hit optimize, and then just go out there with your lineups. Feels a little bit, what's the word for it? Careless to do that on a week like this. You could definitely enter lineups that aren't different enough. That would be my opinion on that. Alrighty, let's go through some prop stuff now. So if you're just here for DFS, appreciate all the support here, guys. Hit that like button on the way out. But now it's time to hit some props up. In fact, this is the first time that I'm seeing the Prize Picks board. They dropped it this morning after I'd already left for Eastlake. So literally my first reaction here, and I know it's been up for quite some time. So it looks a little bit lower than what we have on Underdog, which is hugely clutch, especially considering some of the unders that I took over there. Some of the props are the same. So like a Fleetwood is at the same price tag over there. That makes sense. Like Xander's 0.5 lower. So probably some value that we can pick off here, especially like some of these lower tier guys. Yeah, definitely some value that we can pick off. Let's see. Let's look at the other categories. They've got greens up. Okay, it was pretty firm out there today. So maybe even some unders you could take there. And then for fairways, probably some unders too. It definitely looked a little bit firmer than I was expecting. So let's see. I think I'm down to 7.5. What was the average? So the average at this golf course last year was 58%. Again, with a much softer golf course, it's probably going to be significantly lower this time, probably closer to like 52 to maybe even 55%, which means let's find somebody to pick on here, right? Maybe a more inaccurate driver like Ricky Fowler, right? Maybe we take his under for fairways. You could probably find a few other guys too here even, but yeah, in general, I would be going unders on fairways and unders on greens, even with the perfect weather, right? Even without any sort of wind out there tomorrow. When you have tiny targets like you have at Eastlake, when you have fairways that are rolling out, it's more so about that than the actual winds out there, right? Winds definitely impact play, but firm and fast greens can impact it just as much. So let's go ahead. Let's keep the Ricky Fowler one on there. I don't hate that prop whatsoever. Oh, they got all these different color changes on here for the rebranding. Oh boy. It's making it really hard to read, honestly. Let's see. Pars are better. They have guys at what? 2.5 pars are better. Okay. Sorry, 2.5 bogeys, I should say. 15.5 pars better. Okay. I guess that makes sense. Over here in strokes, just to point out some of the values that I was looking at before. One of them was I guess Tommy Fleetwood's at the same projection, but they had somebody at a higher projection than what they had over there on Underdog. And I liked them before the bump. So let's see. Where was that? Was it Glover? Let me double check on that. Was it Glover? Good old Lucas Glove. Yeah, well, he's at 69 strokes and he's at 69.5 on Prize Picks. That might be a move. I think the scoring average tomorrow, guys, is going to be like 1 under par. Lucas Glover, right, has been playing a lot better than an average player over this last month or so. I don't hate that at all. But no, Keegan was at the same. Was it Finau? No, Finau's also at 69 strokes, right? Yeah, he's also at that same number. Yeah, it must have been Glove, the good old Glove. All right. Honestly, in terms of a stream slip, we're going to go with this one right here. The Ricky Fowler under fairways and the Glover under strokes. We didn't even do any line shopping here, which in fact, I can just go ahead and bring up right now. But if I had to take a gander, some of the other sports books probably have them at lower lines. But we can double check. You don't have to guess on that. You're going to bring up Caesars, William Hill. They're one of the sports books that actually does fairway lines. So we can cross-reference with that and get an idea for what they're looking at. So let's bring up golf, go over the Tour Championship. Let's find fairways. All right. So, okay. Maybe not. Reason I say that, look, they have Finau at 7.5, minus 170 to the over. I mean, honestly, this plus 130 under, if I could bet at Caesars, I would bet that. Let's see. Do they have them up here? Do they even have so they don't have Ricky Fowler up. In terms of like a comparable player, I guess like Jordan's probably a pretty comparable player. They've got him at 7.5. Matt Fitzpatrick's a pretty comparable guy when it comes to fairways. He's at 7.5 and juice towards the under. Max Homa is probably pretty comparable too, honestly. He's at 8.5, but he's minus 155 for the under. So I think this 8 projection over here for Ricky is definitely a little bit high, especially because these guys, I don't think they're expecting it to play as firm as it probably will tomorrow. So guys like Ricky, I think might roll out into the intermediate, once, twice out there. And really, that's all we need to hit the under here, right? A lot of the percentages, like on Data Golf here, they include the intermediate cuts as a fairway. So, if we get 1 or 2 of those bounces to go our way, he probably should be soaring under this projection. So I like that for Ricky. I like the fact that a lot of these sports books will use Data Golf to go out there to make their lines, not realizing that they're inflated for a lot of the different golf tournaments that include an intermediate cut. So, and there's a lot of intermediate cuts just worth noting around East Lake. So that's definitely a factor out there. In terms of underdog, guys, I already bet the entire board. And I'm not kidding, by the way. I bet every single player in the field on underdog for some sort of positive stance. Now, most of them got bumped, but not all of them. I'll find you 2 of my favorites that are left right now. And I can already tell you this Nick Taylor over 3 birdies was already one of my favorite props, and it's still there at 3. So we'll definitely go ahead and throw that one in. And let me see if we can find any other ones that I really like. So we can't take birdies again, right? Because of the rules on underdog. Let's find a strokes prop that makes sense. All right. So if I was going to bet anything right now, right, and I had no exposure in, which is obviously not true, I would take the Nick Taylor over at 3 birdies, and I would take the Xander Schauffele under at 68.5 strokes. Xander is at 68 over here on Prize Picks. So obviously you're getting a little bit of built-in value, right, with that prop there. And then over there with the 3 birdies number, no one in the field should be at 3 birdies. The average birdies at this golf course, I think in all but 1 round over the last 7 years, has been 4 birdies plus. So for Nick Taylor, who, believe it or not, and this is mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing to me too. He's number 22 on tour when it comes to birdie or better percentage. And if you look at just this field, he's in the top 12 birdie makers in all this field. So somebody like him, right, who's a top average birdie maker, shouldn't be at 3 birdies, right? An entire birdie below the average. So that's why I like the Nick Taylor prop so much. It's the most mispriced prop on the entire slate, to be frank with you. And then obviously we're getting some value with Xander here. Just to give you an idea, Xander is over here on Caesars. And let me give you his strokes prop. So he's at 68.5, and he's slightly juiced towards the under. So maybe not quite as juiced as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like minus 150 with the no wins tomorrow, but still, right? A little bit juiced towards that direction. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. Where are we at? Any questions? No, looks like we're good on questions. All right, I've got some dinner to get to. I've got some lineups to build. So if you have anything you want me to touch on, now is the time. If not, I'm going to hop on out of here and start getting my stuff done, start getting ready for tomorrow. In terms of prop exposure, if you guys are on the Patreon, I'll be adding a few Prize Picks props over there in the next hour or so. So keep an eye on that. And my final player poll, I should say, over there for this week will also be posted on Patreon in the next like half an hour to an hour. So outside of that, that is all I've got for this week. One thing I would say just to remind you guys is be different, be creative this week. Let me actually go out there and try and find these optimal lineups for you, just to leave you on that parting note, because I feel like it's going to teach you guys a little something about this. So let's see. Let me see if I can find the 2021. Let's see. Oh, am I not going to be able to find it? I have to go on my Dropbox. Okay, so the Dropbox isn't going to work. Maybe you can find it on Twitter. Okay. Let's see. Can we get it on Twitter? We can. Okay, so Rick Run Good on Twitter also posts the optimals. Let's just go through that. So shout out to Rick for doing this. Last year, the optimals spent $49,000, right? Just looking at this right here, right? Sanjay started with a good amount of placement points that week. Justin Thomas was middle of the pack. Rory was middle of the pack, and Homa, Straka, and Hoagie down here, all three of these players were like 5K golfers, right? And this lineup, you can see, left an entire $1,000 on the table, right? And this was the winner last year. I think he posted a few others on here, right? Okay, so this was the one from the year before. It spent within $200 of the maximum. But I mean, look at this, right? It played Kevin Na at $6,000, right? It was the double spend up, right, with JT and John Rahm, but it had what three guys that were $6,000 and lower. So yeah, that Suds and Duds approach worked that year, obviously. And then is this another one? Yeah, look at this. So these were the top three lineups. I guess from what year? This was 2020. $46,000, 46.2 down there, and then yeah, one of them spent $49,000, 700 there. But you can see like lineups leaving $3,000 on the table were the optimal that week, right? So just because somebody is starting at the top of the board, right? Like I think Rory was starting at the top of the board that year, or he was like the one chalky player there, doesn't mean the rest of the lineup is going to be super chalky. So we'll leave you with those parting notes. Yes, we got a haircut for sure. It's just super hot out, man. Got to avoid that. But yeah, from the stylistic standpoint, apparently it looks a little bit better too. So we'll go with that. Thanks, boss. Enjoy your time in Atlanta. Of course, Cody. I'll let you guys know on Twitter about the stream tomorrow. You'll love it. Thank you. Of course, Jordan. We'll leave it at that, guys. Peace out. I appreciate all of you. Best of luck with your lineups, any outright bets that you guys are going with. And let's have ourselves a week. But we'll 100% have streams for rounds 3 and 4. Round 2, a little bit up in the air, right? I will be going to the game. There's a chance I do one before it or even after, right? I mean, I'm only staying for the first half. I'm not going to stay for the whole preseason game. That's for damn sure. I'll stay until like Kenny Pickett stops playing. If we get done in time, I might be able to do a stream at like 9:30 p.m. So just check out the Twitter, check out the Patreon. Of course, I'll be posting when I'll be going live. And let's have ourselves a week. Until then, best of luck, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow, hopefully.